Good evening and welcome to SportsZone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman, and today we have a lot of basketball to talk about. First, we're going to start off with the Dallas Mavs, who just came off of a loss to the Indiana Pacers. Here to recap that game with me is Gabby Pippins and Renee Ramirez. Guys, how are you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good. I'm just really excited to see what this Mavs team can do, even though they did have a loss last night.
Renee, how are you?
I'm doing great as well, yeah.
So first, I'm going to look a couple weeks ago, look at the All-Star break. Derek Lively, Luka Doncic, both playing in the All-Star games. How cool was it to see those two in the All-Stars, Gabby?
Oh, I thought it was really great, especially Derek Lively being invited to that Rising Stars game in your rookie season. That's a huge accomplishment and a really great compliment toward him. And I think he was really able to show, just a lot of his skills. He had 6 points in the first game and then a team best 6 points in the championship game. And I feel like that just really helped Team Jalen to get that win, especially considering that he had a 100% shooting accuracy. I just really like seeing his versatility and his quickness. He had this alley-oop catch from Jordan Hawkins. He just did a lot of great things, and I'm really happy that he's on the Mavs.
And Renee, your thoughts on the All-Star break?
Yeah, you'd like to see Doncic sort of take the game a little more seriously. I mean, I don't expect him to sort of pull a Dame on us, but you saw his stat line. It was a bit freaky. It was 7-7-7. And so, for him, he said it's just an opportunity to connect with guys like LeBron and all the stars there. So, it is what it is. But if they ever decide to do a 1v1 tournament, that would be sort of Luka Doncic's game. And, for Lively, I thought it was, like you said, it was really good on his performance. You're not really looking to get a lot out of, the Rising Stars game, but he did do well. And I thought the more notable thing was his presence as a media member.
Oh, yeah.
As a rookie, 20 years old, he's already doing man on the street styled interviews. And so you see a guy who's 7'1" with a mic talking to players, you kind of have to listen. So, and he did well. So it was really interesting to see.
Yeah, it definitely was interesting to see him. I remember there was a video of him going up to Luka and be like, oh my gosh, it's Luka. So it was fun to see him do that. But we're going to move on to Sunday night. Mavs take a big loss to the Indiana Pacers as they lost 133-111. Gabby, what went wrong for the Mavs this game?
Honestly, I really think it just comes down to two things here. They need to get more defensive stops. You can't let someone go back-to-back threes like Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nemeth did. You can't allow 14 threes. You just got to get those defensive stops, play better defense. They only had like a season-low 15 assists as a team. So I think they just really need to play the same way that they played against the Suns. Like, they dominated. They had a really great performance. If they had brought that to the Pacers game, we probably would have seen a different outcome.
Yeah, it almost seemed like they just weren't prepared for that game. They came off the All-Star break with the win against the Suns and then sort of fell off in this game. What did you think went wrong, Renee?
I think I'm going to hit you with, to start up, a Shaq one-liner or two-liner. Ben Shepherd, I apologize. I wasn't very familiar with your game. He went 5 for 5 and scored his career-high 15 points as a rookie. Before then, I don't know if many people knew who he was, but he definitely put himself on the map there. But, obviously he wasn't the main reason they won, but he was part of the reason. Sort of, you saw a lot of the perimeter, the help defense, the Kyries, the Jaden Hardys. All of those people were attacked by Rick Carlisle, who is very familiar with the team. And so he was sort of the catalyst of what happened, and that was that the help defense got extremely taken advantage of, which usually doesn't happen. It's not such a centralized thing until the playoffs, but Rick Carlisle it's his revenge game. So
right.
He really put emphasis on that for his offense.
And as you mentioned when you were talking about Luka, in the All-Star break, not necessarily taking the All-Star game seriously, how did you think he did in this game up against the Pacers?
I thought he did well. It's a Luka Doncic game, so he put the 30 and almost a triple-double. 33, 6, and 6, I believe. You expect greatness out of him, and this season in particular, you expect the point outage. However, it just over and over, like a broken clock, it just wasn't enough. And
right.
With that stat line, you want it to be enough. So I don't think Luka Doncic was the problem, and I also don't think he was, the solver. So
right.
I just think it was another Luka game that fell short. So
right, and usually when Luka has Luka games, you'll expect Kyrie to step up as well. And I thought Kyrie did. He had 29 points. There just was something missing there. Gabby, What sort of spark was missing in this game?
I honestly just think it's the same thing that they had against the Suns. You know, I feel like going into that game, they knew it was big. They knew it was a tiebreaker and that it would place them at 6th in the Western Conference. So they came and they played the best that they could. I don't know that they did that against the Pacers. I mean, I know we're talking about their defense, you know, and Kyrie, he had a great performance. Like you said, 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists, but no blocks or steals. I mean, you have to play better defense than that, especially considering all of these back-to-back threes and the great shooting that the Pacers were doing. You know, 56% versus the Mavs' 47% shooting. So yeah, Luka and Kyrie had great individual performances, but as a team, not so much.
Right, and then I want to talk about this stat because it kind of hints towards the defense that you're talking about. The Mavericks allowed the Pacers to shoot 93 field goals. That's not including three-pointers. That's not including free throws. Strictly off of field goals, the Pacers took 93 shots. Renee, how did the Mavericks step up into their defense and get a win out of this game versus a loss?
Are you talking like how they could have got a win against the Pacers?
Right.
I mean, first of all, you don't let Miles Turner score double his season average. I mean, he scored 33, and so on top of the three-point outage of the Pacers, you're letting Miles Turner score 33. I mean, Miles Turner, you're not known for being a 30-plus point scorer, so that's a start. And so, I mean, you just got to close the gaps, and so I think you start there, and that's the starting point. But there's so many defensive issues. I mean, you're ranked 20th in defensive rating, so it's an easy fix, but it's something you got to build off of. And so, sort of that wing, putting more discipline into that wing perimeter defense, even with the undersized guards, they took complete advantage of it. And so, what's to say that a playoff team won't do the same thing? So
Right. And Gabby, just to piggyback off of Renee's point, is there any player you would like to see step up on the defensive end?
Definitely PJ Washington. Like, he was acquired because of his defense, also for scoring, obviously, because it's basketball.
Right.
But yeah, he just really needs to step up. Again, he did not have the same performance that he had coming off of the Suns. You know, he had a steal and a block during the Suns game. This time around, not so much. And I just feel like he really needs to step up, be that defensive player that the Mavs got him for, and I really think it's also a bit of a team effort as well.
Right.
Like, it doesn't just fall on one player. You know, like Kyrie, you got to have blocks and steals, especially being the player that he is. So it's just a little bit of everything, honestly.
Right, and looking at the Mavs, yes, they struggled this game, but there's got to be some sort of positives in this game. So Renee, what positives did you see for the Mavs?
that's a tough one. I guess that Luka and Kyrie will still give you those points. So that's not a problem, I guess. But that's the best I can come up with, is that Luka and Kyrie will still do their job. Now it's up to everyone else. And so that's a positive. The consistency is there. And so this wasn't the game that they fell off a cliff. So yeah.
And Gabby, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, you know, like you said, Luka and Kyrie, they're playing their game, they're doing what they need to be doing, but at the same time, it still needs to be something that the team as a whole is doing right. I mean, Derek Lively and PJ Washington combined for 6 points. 6 points. So I just feel like there needs to be players like Josh Green, who really tried to step up. You know, he had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 steals. I just feel like that's what everybody else should have been trying to do, is what Josh Green did, just stepping up, trying to get that defense in, even if there's 2 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
Right. Well, the Mavericks will play the Cavaliers tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And when we come back, we'll stay on the court as we take a look at the Mean Green basketball teams.
Now we return to Fabric of Passion.
Oh, Hector, it will be so hard for us to part, but we must.
But, my love, what did I do? I thought we were meant to be together forever.
I am so disheartened to say that you're just not in style anymore. But you will be, to someone else, in a better place.
You're gonna shred me?
No.
I'm donating you to one of the many clothing donation boxes available on campus. There is one in the Union by the Syndicate and one on Union Circle Drive.
Oh, well, why didn't you just say so? I'm gonna be someone's new shirt.
I thought you'd be more distressed.
Oh, absolutely not. It was cramped in your closet anyways.
Maybe you would like to be shredded after all.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Let's get started. This is a motor vehicle. This is the blinker mechanism. To use it, push it up for the right blinker and down to go left. You're welcome. It was easy.
Hey man, are you okay in there? You look terrible. Have you been up all night? Don't you know that according to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, staying up all night can have a negative effect on your GPA?
Sleep.
Yeah, go to bed.
Welcome back to SportsZone. We're here today to recap the UNT men's and women's basketball team. We're going to take a look at the men's first. Here to recap these two games over the weekend with me is Adam C. and Wyatt Schott. Guys, we're going to start with the men's. They took a hard loss to UTSA as they lost 64-62. Adam, what struggles did the Mean Green face this game?
Unnaturally inefficient on shooting. 5 for 21 on threes. I mean, they were just woeful shooting-wise. And it's weird because they still controlled the game. In fact, ahead pretty majorly with about 10 minutes left. Up 9, looked solid, and then all kind of fell apart at the end.
Right.
Kind of like the SMU game I talked about 2 weeks ago.
Wyatt, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a game where North Texas had led through the majority of the game. Like you said, they were up by 9 points in the fourth quarter. But like you said, they shoot 5 for 21 from 3. It was just an abysmal shooting game. I mean, when your best player is shooting 1 for 9 from 3, that's kind of a sign of how things go. Reuben Jones comes back. He doesn't perform well, although he gets the start. CJ Nolan was really efficient as he went 12 points, perfect from the field, really good game from him, but ultimately just wasn't enough to get the win.
Yeah, and we've established throughout all of our shows, it seems like, with the UNT men's team, they are a live by the 3 and die by the 3. Y'all both mentioned it, 23.8% from 3. Just didn't cut it for the Mean Green. So what solutions do you propose to this offense, Wyatt?
It's interesting. At this point in the season, you would hope that they have it figured out by now. They kind of, like you said, they live by the 3 and die by the 3, but they're such a slow team that it's so hard for them to crawl back into games. They're really good at maintaining leads, which is so shocking that this game was lost the way it was. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they can make a fundamental change because they're pretty weak on the interior. Aaron Skye was supposed to have a big year this year. He hasn't lived up to that billing. Right. So at this point in the season, I don't know how much you can really change.
Right. Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know how much you can change. It's this late in the season. At this point, ride or die.
So in this game, CJ Nolan was back, and so was Reuben Jones. Mm-hmm. And, I thought that almost was a guaranteed win for the Mean Green. So do y'all think maybe the chemistry wasn't there because the 2 injured players returned back?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a possibility. I thought that this would provide a nice spark for them. UTSA is a pretty weak opponent. They're one of the worst teams in the American.
They're like 8-19.
Yeah, exactly. And North Texas has been so good at home. I thought that this would be a nice bounce back game for them. They really need another shot creator outside of Jason Edwards. I thought Reuben Jones would be able to do that. I thought CJ Nolan would be able to do that. CJ Nolan did his part. Reuben Jones didn't step up, and I'm not going to blame him too much. You're coming off of injury. I don't expect you to be your old self right off the gate, but to only drop like 7 points, I believe is what it was, I really expected more from him, and I just don't know exactly where North Texas goes from here.
Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think the chemistry got thrown off simply due to the fact that we've been playing without Nolan and Jones for quite a bit, and they come in, should have been an easy game, and it wasn't. And overall, I think it just cost us towards the end because, let's be honest, we just couldn't make a shot towards the end.
Right. And for the MVP of this game, who are you guys going with? Adam, I'll start with you.
I'm going with Jordan Ivy Curry. For one, really cool name, but also 21 points off the bench for UTSA, 5 for 8 on threes, incredibly efficient, just played incredibly well. And I think he was the reason that UTSA had a chance in this game and won.
Yeah, Wyatt, before we get to your MVP, I also have to go with him. 5 of 8 from 3, 7 of 17 on field goal, and as you mentioned, 21 points off the bench. Man just got fired out of a cannon, it seemed like. So, Wyatt, who are you taking as your MVP?
Yeah, no, I agree for the game it would be him, but I'll go with someone for North Texas, and I will say CJ Nolan. First game back from injury, comes off the bench, gives you 12 really efficient points. I think if North Texas wins this game, we talk about him in really, really high regard. So I'll give him the MVP just for North Texas' sake.
Right. And then lastly, before we get into the women's basketball game, what were your thoughts on the coaching? Because for me, I respect the defense. You only allowed 64 points, but offensively, you only scored 62. So, Wyatt, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know how much you can mark up to coaching. It was really just an inefficient game, and that's something you can't really control, especially when it comes to shooting. You know, if you live by the three, you're going to die by the three. That's just how it goes sometimes. This is college basketball. These aren't professional players that you expect to shoot at a high clip. I understand the frustration, but I don't know what else we could have done.
Yeah, I don't know what we could have done. Team looked lost and panicky towards the end, and I get it. We're live by the three, live by the three, die by the three. But when you're 5 for 21 on three, maybe stop taking threes at a certain point. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, we're going to flip things over now. We're going to take a look at the women's side as they got a huge win, 95-77 over UAB. First of all, guys, did you expect this big of a win over UAB, Wyatt?
I was hoping for a really big win, especially how we had come off back-to-back losses at home nonetheless. The first two home losses of the whole season right before this. So to go on the road and dominate was really, really refreshing.
Adam, did you expect it?
No, I did not. I was expecting a close, hard-fought game. It was kind of in the first half. We pulled away towards the end, and we just kept pulling away, quite frankly.
And in the American Athletic Conference, especially on the women's side, it seems like those top 6 teams, they're all within, a game or two of each other. So did y'all think that this game potentially looked like a American Athletic Conference tournament game?
Absolutely. No, it definitely could have been. You could be looking at a little preview into the tournament. I mean, this stretch that they have down the end of the season is so important. Losing those 2 games were really big because you honestly still had a chance in an at-large if you didn't lose these 2. Now you do. Now your season's on the line with every single game for the rest of the way, and you have to win them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a preview. And again, I don't want to jinx our chances, but I think we'll see that in the tournament again.
And then what were some of the key factors as to why the Mean Green got such a big win over UAB, Adam?
Sheer offensive firepower. I mean, 95 points, third most in a conference game ever, most since Rice in 2016. I mean, literally, we could have played almost any team in the country with that performance, and we would have beat them. Come on, 55% shooting, 43% from three, literally the opposite of what the men did, more or less.
Right.
Lampkin played another great game at center. Desiree Colonel just looked great. She was popping, with all due respect. and honestly, we win that game 10 out of 10 with that sort of firepower.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was an offensive game from beginning to end. Tamisha Lampkin and Desiree Colonel combined for 49 points. You had 4 starters with over 10 points. A good spark off the bench from Deani Robinson. Just a really great offensive game. And like you said, Adam, I don't know if we perform this level consistently, I don't know if there's a team in the American that can beat us.
And also, one more thing I want to add, sorry.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
One more thing I want to add, rebounding. That is something we are exceptionally good at. We almost doubled UAB in rebounds, and that's not just the only game. We have rebounded so well. Lampkin is great. Colonel just came out of nowhere, 13 rebounds. Could have had a triple-double if she had 3 more assists. I mean, overall, right now, this team, kind of like you said, Wyatt, no one can beat them if they can play like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, speaking of doubling the amount of rebounds, UNT had 50 points in the paint. I feel like if you dominate in the paint, it's like you said, it's the opposite of the men. You don't have to live by the 3, die by the 3. How big of an impact was it to have those 50 points in the paint, Wyatt?
Yeah, no, it means everything to this team. They play through their post, which is Tamisha Lampkin and Desiree Colonel. They want to get them the ball early, and that creates great looks from the perimeter, and that's in the stats show that they shot 6 for 14 from 3. That's because they weren't forcing threes and they were getting natural, good open looks.
That, and also I want to go on to the more defensive side, or I guess defensive side. UAB does not get a single easy rebound.
Right.
And that is something that I think is so underrated about this team. No one gets easy rebounds against us. Everyone has to work for us, and we make other teams work. Not only in playing defense, but just having to rebound. Because I mean, it's difficult with Lampkin and Colonel.
Right. Very quickly, Wyatt, what were your thoughts on the coaching this game? Because Coach Burton has just been amazing for this program.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is a great coaching job. They obviously came with a game plan to get Tamisha Lampkin and Desiree Carroll the ball early. I like how he brings Deani Robinson off the bench, a nice spark to give some offensive juice to the game. Maybe if it's a little dead. I really like that. I think he coached a great game, and it was evident in the win.
Adam, your thoughts?
I'm about to say, I can't really say anything about it. 195-77. I mean, what am I going to say?
Right. Well, tomorrow night, the Lady Mean Green take on Eastern Carolina at 6:30 p.m. And when we come back, we'll take a look at the national basketball scene.
Man, I have all these non-perishable food items. I don't know what to do with them.
I don't have any food at all.
Do you have too many non-perishable goods?
Yeah.
Have you run out of food and can't get any more?
Yeah.
Well, don't have a cow. Head on down to the UNT Food Pantry. Located behind Crumley Hall and Diamond Eagle Student Resource Center, the Food Pantry is the place for UNT students to get all the food they need. You'll be utterly surprised by all the options they have there. From gluten-free to lactose intolerant, even vegan and vegetarian, they have it all. Go to studentaffairs.unt.edu/food pantry for more information.
Move on down to the UNT Food Pantry.
All right, look up here. 1, 2, 3. Mom, Dad, I got it.
You're right, Mom. I have.
So a man's been walking in the desert for days at a time. He finally comes across a bar and orders a Coke.
That's not funny.
Eh?
It's that time of year where everyone plays a dangerous game with the flu. Going in uneducated, you run the risk of symptoms like cough, migraine, and fatigue. Don't be like this guy. Combat the flu with cough drops, ibuprofen, and a good night's sleep. Be smart, don't catch the flu.
Good evening. Welcome back to SportsZone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman. And this past weekend, the UNT softball team competed in the UNT Invite and went 4-2 in the tournament. Here to talk about the tournament with me is going to be Mason Brenham and Benjamin Wolf. Guys, I thought this was a great tournament for the Mean Green. They come out of it with 4 wins, 2 of which over a Power 5 school. So overall, Ben, what was your thoughts on how the Mean Green performed in the tournament?
I thought it was a great tournament, especially considering last week's failures. I thought we really pulled it together and did a great job, especially against New Mexico and then later against SFA. It was a really, really strong tournament.
And Mason, your thoughts on how the Mean Green looked
I mean,
this
I
tournament?
think going into a tournament like this where you have top teams, it's going to be one of those tournaments where it's going to be a knockout, drag-out brawl. So for the team to come out with those 4 wins is going to be a big play into the season.
Right, and we're going to take a look back at Friday. UNT comes out with 2 wins. They beat New Mexico 3-1, and then they beat Minnesota. A close game, 7-5. Guys, who was your top performer on Friday? Mason, I'll go with you.
Mine was actually Mackenzie Wagner, who threw the game against New Mexico. She went 7 innings with 3 hits, 1 run earned, and 8 strikeouts. Having a pitching performance like that really puts in a lot of confidence going into this season, and I think it also helps spread confidence to other pitchers saying, hey, we can go out there and put on a great performance against a top team.
Right, and Ben, who was your top performer for Friday?
I would have to agree with Mason. I mean, Wagner played a great game pitching, and so did Christensen. And I think Wagner's performance really led into their following game against SFA. I mean, she really demonstrated her grit.
Right, and then going into Saturday's games, UNT beats New Mexico 1-0 and loses to Texas Tech 7-8 in just a nail-biter game. So guys, who was your top performer on Saturday? Ben, you can go first.
I would have to say Kaylee. I mean, she did a great job getting those runs and getting those hits. I think she's definitely a star player, but we can't forget about our pitchers. I mean, they do a great job. Now, with a school like Tech, it's always going to be hard, but I think we still demonstrated a very strong team.
And Mason, your top performer for Saturday?
For me, it was actually Tatum Sparks. I mean, in the game against Tech, she went 1 for 3 with a run, 2 RBIs, and so maybe not necessarily the batting kind of, maybe you want to say, oh, you want to go 2 for 3 or 3 for 3, but being able to step up in those clutch moments and get those 2 RBIs and score that run, while yes, you didn't lead to the win, it certainly did help in that case.
Right, and then looking at Sunday, once again, the Mean Green went 1-1 on the day. They lost to Texas Tech 2-5, but then they beat Stephen F. Austin 3-0 with a shutout game. How big was the pitching performance in the game against Stephen F. Austin?
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, Wagner really carried the entire game, getting, 8 outs or something like that. Yeah. I mean, she was absolutely amazing. And then with the runs, and of course, you're always going to get some walks here and there.
Right.
And it's softball, baseball, it's just how it goes. But we demonstrated a great ability to really stay on the ball.
Mason, your thoughts on the pitching performance?
Well, I think it was great. And kind of going into having those walks, yes, don't necessarily want to give up walks, but one thing that I've always heard is walks are better than hits. I mean, because you put in a tough at bat, you try to put where your pitches want to go, and sometimes they don't necessarily go exactly, but being able to still have that confidence, say, hey, it was only a walk, it wasn't a hit, and be able to go to the next batter and maybe get a double play or get a huge out and just step up, I think that's something that they need to look at.
Right, and if I were to give an MVP for this tournament, I'm going to have to go with Mackenzie Childers. Her performance was just amazing. You look back, she had one of the games against Minnesota. She just came in for 1 inning, but she did her job. She only walked 1, struck out 4. So that's a performance you love to see. So if y'all were to give an MVP overall in the UNT invite, who are you giving it to for the Mean Green?
It would have to be Wagner. I mean, I think Wagner just played the most consistently over all the games. I mean, she had some fallouts, but I think she did great throughout the entire weekend.
And Mason, your thoughts?
I would also have to say Childers. I think coming out of the bullpen was strong, but especially that start against New Mexico. She threw a no-hitter. I mean, that's something that's very tough to do. So for them to be even in extra innings, so being able to go out into those extra innings, it's really great to throw a no-hitter.
Right, and Ben, you mentioned before the UNT invite, you've mentioned, UNT really struggled. What did this tournament say about the Mean Green? They came out of it 4-2. Got some big wins. So what does it say about this team?
I mean, it really says that they're willing to step up. I think they have a very strong potential for the season. It really shows that they're not letting the defeats get them down. They're here to win. And I think as long as we continue on this way, we'll see a very good season from them.
And Mason, your thoughts?
Well, I think going up against these tough teams, it's got to be one of those where it's like, hey, even if we don't win, we played well. But one thing that I did notice in that nail-biter against Tech, we had a 5-run lead and then give up 5 runs in the 6th. That's something you can't do if you want to win a game. So I would say overall it was a great tournament for the team, but I think there are still some things that they need to look into.
Right, and speaking of things to look into, what struggles is this team going to have to fix before heading into conference play, Mason?
Well, I think, like I said, one of the big things they need to run into is the innings, and then I think fielding errors. That's just going to be something they need to look at.
Right, and speaking of UNT sports, we're going to stick with college sports here as we look at the NCAA basketball when we come back.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Let's get started. This is a motor vehicle. This is the blinker mechanism. To use it, push it up for the right blinker and down to go left. You're welcome. It was easy.
Can I see your voter registration, please? All right, you're good. No registration, no entry. All right. Let me see your voter registration card, please.
I'm not registered to vote.
No registration, no entry.
Dude, my friends are already in there.
No registration, no entry.
What the?
Join the club. Register to vote today.
Welcome back to SportsZone. As March slowly approaches, it's time to broaden our horizons and take a look at the national level on how these basketball teams are shaping up. We're going to start on the men's side, and here to talk about some NCAA basketball with me is Adam O'Day and Nash Lowry. Guys, the first conference we're going to be looking at today is the SEC. Nash, who do you think is going to be the top team in the SEC?
Well, I mean, despite losing to Kentucky on Saturday, Alabama is definitely the powerhouse here. They've played statistically the toughest schedule in the nation. Upcoming, they've got a showdown with Tennessee coming up this Saturday.
That'll be a great game.
Yeah, that'll officially decide it, but honestly, I don't think that Bama's coming away with this one. Crimson Tide have the best offensive efficiency in the nation. Offensive efficiency is your points per 100 possessions, and they top that with 125. But the Volunteers on the opposite end with defensive efficiency are second in the nation with 91. They only allow 91 points per 100 possessions. So with this one, it's offense versus defense, and defense is going to top out. Tennessee is going to win, and that just leaves the ever inconsistent but talented Kentucky to win the SEC.
Adam, your thoughts?
Right, I'd have to agree. I believe Tennessee will win this game. They held Bama to a season-low 71 points the last time these two teams played. But I believe Bama, in the long run, will make a deeper run in March.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say that this is definitely going to come down between Tennessee and Alabama. There's been so many upsets this season that out of the top three teams in the SEC, I think Kentucky is the most fraudulent of the three. So like you mentioned, it's going to come down between Tennessee and Alabama, and I think Tennessee will take it purely because of their defense. I think I'm more of a defensive-minded person.
Yeah. And
so I think defense takes the offense.
Right, and like you said, there's been a lot of upsets this season. The upsets are only going to get more and more occasional. They're going to happen more frequently now that we're getting into March. And once these games matter, the nerves are high, the tensions are high.
Right.
Everybody's going to be so locked in that we're going to see some major slip-ups that we think we wouldn't have seen. So it also might be very possible that Alabama runs away with this one and secures the SEC.
Now we're going to take a look at the ACC. I'm going to go Duke here. I know they're one game behind North Carolina, but I think when it comes down to who's had more momentum this season, I feel like Duke has had their presence in the scope of basketball. So Adam, I'd like to know your thoughts on the ACC.
Yeah, Duke and North Carolina, it seems, are always going to be really good, but I believe Duke will end up making a longer run in March and will probably end up winning the ACC tournament.
I don't know what y'all are talking about. I mean, personally, it's a two-horse race. Like, it's going to be given. Blue Bloods are going to fight each other. They're going to go at each other's throats. But North Carolina's reigning this year, and they've got the win over Duke. And recently, Filipowski's injury, he sprained his knee. We don't know exactly how long he's going to be out after that court storming incident. But with Filipowski out and their recent loss that they just had, I feel like that's going to stop their momentum big time, and that's going to give North Carolina more time to increase the gap and take the ACC.
Well, now moving on to the Big 12, I feel like this one is kind of obvious, but it is a very competitive conference. I'm going to have to go with Houston here. They're 15-0 at home. If they can keep that momentum going into March, I get it. They're not playing at home in March in their conference tournament. But, I mean, they've just done so good. They're top 5 in points differential, so I can see Houston coming atop the Big 12.
That's a fair assessment. I mean, they bring in a lot of alumni. They've got excellent coaching, like Hakeem Olajuwon, probably their most storied alumnus. definitely is involved in their college program. You know, a lot of good voices speaking to them. And they will likely end up as number one at the end of this week. But Kansas, with their big fella Hunter Dickinson, he's been averaging 18 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks. If you don't know his name, he's 7'2". That, like, you know, just give it away.
Basically Zach Edey.
Yeah, pretty much, like, you know, Zach Edey. So that gives it away for Kansas, and they definitely have the pedigree and the experience to win these big games. Their starters, 4 seniors, 1 junior. All said, enough said.
Right. Adam, who are you going with?
Yeah, I've got to go with Houston. I mean, I thought they would have a drop-off, like, as you mentioned, with Kansas being so good, but, I mean, Houston really hasn't missed a beat. They were number 1 for parts of last season and just moved up to an ultra-competitive Big 12, and they're still number 1 in the nation. So, I mean, it's hard to argue with, you know, how good they've been and how good they'll probably continue to be.
Right. And moving on, we're going to take a look at the Big East. Again, this one to me is just obvious. UConn. What are your guys' thoughts?
None of us are really gonna fight you on that. I mean, really, just the worst thing they've done this season is that Creighton Blue Jays just recently upset them. They lost 85-66. But that's pretty much their only bad beat. I feel like they're going to take this one with a grain of salt. It's only going to encourage them in their practices and their facilities coming up forward while we push to March. But they're still the team to beat. They're still up on the mountaintop, that premier team. Everybody looks up at them in their weight room. They definitely have a UConn poster or something, and they're thinking about UConn while they're lifting.
They have the
weights and
women's
practicing.
championships to motivate them.
Yeah,
to
yes,
win those
exactly.
championships. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and they're outscoring their opponents by an average of 17 points a game. Like, I mean, they might get dethroned this year, back-to-back champs, but, I mean, it's not likely.
Right, and moving on, we're going to go to the Big Ten here. Nash, who do you have taken the Big Ten?
Well, Big Ten, I mean, it's Purdue. Come on.
Yeah.
I feel like they're on their revenge tour. They lost in the tournament last season, one of the biggest upsets that we've ever seen. Everybody thought Purdue was running away with it, like myself included. I lost $50. So, yeah, with the Big Ten, it's Purdue. They've been in the top 5 all year, 2 decent stints at the number 1 position in the nation. I got to give it to them.
Right.
What's up, Adam?
Yeah, don't you dare go with anybody else out of the Big Ten. Zach Edey just won his 11th Big Ten Player of the Week award, which is the most in Big Ten history. He averaged 30 points a game this week. Like, the dude's just insane.
That's pretty much all you really need to say. 30 points a game, especially as a big man. Like, really the only person that can match up with him is Kansas's Hunter Dickinson. You know, really nobody around here is 7 foot, 7'2", 7'4", you know what I'm saying?
And moving on, we're going to get into the Pac-12. Adam, I'm going to go with you first. Who do you think's taking the conference away?
I gotta go with UCLA. This one was a bit more difficult, but I love me some dark horses, and UCLA is a bit of a dark horse.
Interesting. I was going to go Arizona. They're number 2 in points per game.
Yeah.
They have 4 players averaging double digits. Nash, who do you think's taking the Pac-12?
I mean, the only bad part about Arizona is that they're in a weak conference. That would be it. Everybody in there is really having an off year, but they've been just sweeping through that, you know. They swamped everybody except for FAU. FAU has had a big upset on them. But throughout most of their stuff, they've been sweeping through. I'm not sure how they match up to the other, like, dark horses whenever it comes to the other conferences, but I got to take Arizona. I'm with you, Mackenzie.
Speaking of FAU, we're going to take a look at the AAC because the Mean Green are in this conference. So who do you think is going to take the AAC?
Well, it's the Mean Green. Dude, I really wish I could. I mean, UNT's been better than anybody has expected. It's really just been a joy to, like, go out there, see them hoop. James Edwards, just truly magnificent. But personally, I got to take FAU. I mean, FAU's been really knocking on the doorstep of everybody else out there, really just, you know, scaring them. You know what I'm saying? South Florida, they're running on, 13 game win streak. So South Florida is there, but I don't think they can match up with FAU.
Right, I agree. I gotta give a big shout out to USF though. They're probably gonna win the regular season conference title outright. I know they just clinched at least a share of the title, but huge props to them. But I gotta go FAU.
Yeah, well, that does it for our scope of the NCAA. And speaking of the NCAA, last week they announced some pretty big news in the world of football. So when we come back, we'll take a look at that.
Has the weight of stress and anxiety ever felt too heavy to overcome? Wish there was a safe place to confide in? Wish granted. At UNT, we offer counseling and testing services to students located on the 3rd floor of Chestnut Hall. UNT, we're here for you.
What does Talents do?
So I am the Vice President of External Relations for Talents. That means that I basically oversee all the external committees. Our external committees entail our Model A, it's a Mean Green Machine. So they bring it to football games especially, so every game it's kind of there, every home game. The Model A is like a symbol of UNC pride, and it's a big tradition that we are so lucky to uphold and maintain. When people look at it, they see it, and they're like, oh, that's the Mean Green Machine. There must be a game today or something to ramp up school spirit for basketball, softball, volleyball, any of those things. We have amazing teams, so we just want to show school spirit for them. Bonfire Committee, which is in charge of putting together the bonfire every year for homecoming. It's kind of just a whole semester-long process up until Build Week that we have to put together and oversee and make sure safety regulations are followed and risk management is taken care of. Cannon Crew, which oversees and takes care of the cannon. They fire it at games, they take it to special occasions.
Oh, that's...
Good evening and welcome back to SportsZone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman. And as I mentioned in the last block, the NCAA announced their official 5+7 format change to the college football playoffs. Here to give their opinions and thoughts on this change is Julian Lofgren and Gabe Ife. Gabe, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on this change?
I like it. I really think it allows more teams that have had amazing years, and maybe have had one bad game, for that one game not to ruin their season. I think that teams really deserve, if they do go 12-1, 11-2, but are in one of the tougher conferences like the SEC, they deserve to be in there. I think it gives a chance for mid-majors, to potentially have an upset. I think it allows for more storylines, and so for those reasons, I really like it.
And Julian, your thoughts on the change to the 5+7?
Again, kind of like you said, I really like it. I think it gives those teams who, one team I really like to look at is 2020 Florida, a team that was able to go. They did really good in the regular season. They lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game, and a team that really arguably should have made the college football playoff. I feel that year they were one of the top 4 teams in the playoff, but didn't make it because of their loss in the SEC championship. So I feel that it gives teams like that, a team that was loaded that year with Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, guys like that, who were really good playmakers and just didn't get a chance to make the college football playoff that year. So I feel it gives teams like that the opportunity to maybe go win a national championship.
Right, and I'm going to want to take a look at how last year's rankings shaped up. And these are the teams in the SEC that would have benefited from this change. 6 of their teams finished in the top 12 last season, that being Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, LSU, and Mizzou. With that being said, what conference do you guys think this change helps out the most in terms of competition?
I'll go first. You kind of took the graphic, the words right out of my hands. I'm going to have to go with the SEC as well. You look at those teams, I think that 6 to 12 range next year is going to be filled up. As long as they don't do too much destroying each other's chances. But if you come in with a bunch of those teams that maybe 2 losses, I could see 4 or 5 of those spots, and as well as whatever the leader is. I could see 5 or 6 SEC teams. The teams you mentioned. I believe Tennessee was or Oklahoma or somebody was 13. I know another SEC team was 13.
Right.
So you have 7 teams in the top 12, top 13. So I really think that they're just going to dominate next year and fill up the college football playoff.
And Julian, your thoughts on who it benefits?
I kind of the same way. I feel it's the SEC, but I think another conference that can make a splash is the Big Ten. You know, with the addition now of USC, Oregon, Washington, some of those teams, Oregon, they were in the top 10, didn't make the college football playoff with their 2 losses to Washington. Maybe if it was the 12-team playoff last year, maybe Oregon could have made a splash in there, but we'll never know. And then maybe like a Penn State, a team that they were 3rd in the East behind Michigan and Ohio State. Maybe they could have made a splash in there. So I think it's the SEC or the Big Ten is really going to have the opportunity to kind of submit themselves as the top tier of college football.
And I'm glad you mentioned the conference change because there's 2 teams that this format really affects. That's going to be Washington State and Oregon State. How do you guys think they're affected by this 5+7 format game?
I don't think it'll be great for them, to be quite honest with you. I think long term, this really hurts their chances. Them both, at least as of right now, being in the Mountain West, that's a significant downgrade. And that means that their basically only shot at getting into the playoff is being the one mid-major team that is guaranteed a spot. It's really hard to see a Mountain West team being top 12 just because the conference, well, it's not a bad conference. It is not anywhere close to top tier. And so just conference wins are not going to propel you to that level. The thing that I think could help either of those 2 programs the most is one of them getting that spot once or twice. Like, they're going to have to repeatedly obtain that mid-major spot. And that could earn them a chance back into a I guess it'd be Power 4 conference now.
Right.
But they need to get back up to a higher conference or long-term their outlooks just aren't good, to be quite frank.
Julian, how do you think they'll be
Yeah,
impacted?
I kind of feel the same way. I think going from being a Pac-12 team to going to a Mountain West team, just the recruiting process is going to fall off quite a bit because that's a lot harder of a sell telling a guy, oh, we're a Pac-12 team as compared to now we're a Mountain West team. For recruits, that's just a big fall off as they kind of want the big name conferences, you know, because that makes them look more ready for the NFL when they're playing better competition. So I feel the fall off for them is going to kind of hurt their recruiting process. But kind of like he said, if they are able to get in the Mountain West and do well and win games and maybe get into a New Year's Six bowl game, maybe get into the 12-team playoff, I really think that it could actually boost their ratings if they can kind of do what kind of Boise State was able to do in the early 2010s. That should really help their recruiting.
And with this 5+7 format, do you think the typical 4 teams we see, you know, make it to the playoffs is going to change? You know, will we still see it be Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, you know, Ohio State, or do you think there'll be a dark horse that comes into the playoffs and shocks people?
I think you're going to continue to see them. I think with the addition of 12 spots means that teams like Georgia, who just missed this year, teams like Ohio State, who missed a little bit this year, I think those spots are just going to fill them up, whether, you know, they come in at like the 10th, 11th or something, or they get back up to where they have been the previous years in the top 4. Now, I think they're, like, with the addition of 12 teams, there gives more chances for upsets. So while I think you will see them continuously, and this will help their chances of being in it every year, I do think with the addition of the other slots, you might not see them make it as far every year.
Right. And Julian, your thoughts?
I kind of agree kind of what he said. It's kind of the way you look. If you look, one team I like to look back to is 2014 TCU in the first ever college football playoff. A team that went 12-1, they got to their bowl game and absolutely killed Ole Miss. They beat them 49-3 that game and just kind of made everybody wonder, is that not one of the 4 best teams? So I feel like, yes, we're going to see the Big 8, Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. We're going to see those teams, but I think we're also going to see teams that we haven't seen and maybe teams that could surprise some people. One team, maybe a Penn State, a team that can maybe get that 6 or 7 seed, maybe surprise somebody in the first round and maybe make a push for a national championship. So I think we'll see the same big teams kind of run those top 4 seeds, but I think we'll get a different variety of the teams that will make the other 12.
And that's, sorry to jump in
real
real fast.
you're good.
That's kind of one thing I think, because I'm a big baseball person, I relate to baseball, that I think college football is really expanding with. Once you get into the playoffs, 2 or 3 games is what's going to decide everybody's season.
Right.
And so that turns it into baseball a little bit more. Baseball has such a long season. But you just can't, you can say in one game anything can happen. So teams such as Georgia or other top-tier teams that have been top-tier for a while could get upset in a one game. Their quarterback has a down game. Their defense has multiple letdowns, and anything could happen.
Right.
So while these teams over a long stretch will probably get in, like Julian was saying, there could be upsets. There could be a lot of different things happen.
Exactly.
And speaking of upsets and mid-major programs that may not have gotten the chance to be in the playoffs that now will be able to be in the playoffs, what university do y'all think has the most chance of making the most amount of noise that wouldn't have gotten the chance this year?
I'll go first. I would say Missouri. I think We were talking
That's
about
a good
them earlier.
choice.
They have an amazing quarterback. They're coach. They're a program on the rise. I think their running back, I believe, is either entered the transfer portal or is going to be in the NFL draft. But yeah, I think they'll rebound tremendously well. They have great recruiting, and I really think they're a team that could come in at that 7-8 spot and cause a lot of noise this year.
And Julian, your thoughts?
One team that I think really kind of flew under a lot of people's radar this year was Ole Miss. Ole Miss went 11-2, and to a lot of people's surprise, ended up the year finishing at 7. And they got a lot of people back. I know Jackson Dart's coming back. They did lose their starting running back, Christian Jenkins, who's now at Ohio State, which is a pretty big loss considering he was probably the best running back in college football. But I mean, they have a great backup guy who's going to be able to replace him. And also they got a giant get in the transfer portal. They got former 5-star defensive tackle Walter Nolan, who's just at A&M, he was a first-team All-American type guy. So just a great get for that defense. So I think Ole Miss and the SEC West should be able to make some noise this year and hopefully make a push for the national championship.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with Oregon here. I think Dan Lanning deciding to stay at the program instead of going to Alabama when Saban retired, I think that was huge, and I like what Oregon's building over there, and I think we can see that transfer into this year. And one other agreement that the NCAA has talked about is eliminating the contracts with the New Year's Six Bowls to their respective conferences. What's your guys' thoughts on that, Gabe?
I think I would love if that would happen. To go with like the 12-team expansion, I think it would allow you to see more mid-major teams, I would say, because there's just like so much openness with the bowl contracts if this does happen. I do think you would see more teams that you wouldn't typically see in New Year's Six Bowls and getting a bigger stage. I think that would allow, for these teams to be spotlighted. And then I just think it would be cool that you wouldn't see the same traditional Big 12 versus, Big 10 matchup every year. I think it'd be really cool. You get matchups you just wouldn't have seen before.
Right. Well, we'll just have to wait a couple of months to see how these changes all affect the NCAA and the football landscape. But we want to thank you guys for watching tonight and keep those TVs rolling as North Texas Nightly News kicks off here in just a few moments.